Today I'm going to run through my favorite hamstring flexibility, mobility stretches and exercises. I'm going to start off with the easiest variations and progressively make it harder and harder. So number one, we want to focus on getting to this position. So be able to go 90 degrees at the hip and have a lumbar curve, have a flat low back. A lot of people, when they first go into this position, they're going to be rounded like this. Even the knees are going to be bent. So we want to try and get to this 90-degree position before we start to progress to harder variations. Now I recommend if you are super tight and you struggle with that one, that you start first laying on your back. Use a post or a door frame. I'm lucky with this setup that I have a bit of the wall that juts out there and I can do it. So I want to keep this leg dead straight. And then I want to see how close I can get to the wall here. Now, if your knee bends, we need to move back a little bit further until we can get a straight leg here. This butt cheek is on the floor. This right butt cheek is also on the floor, and my back and head is on the floor. Now this one's really good because it keeps our spine in a neutral position. I can wind it up by pulling the foot back. I could put a band around my foot as well and hold on to that. But the priority is trying to lock this knee out and slowly progress so you can get closer to the wall. And obviously swap sides. And the cool thing with this one is because it is nice and safe and it's lower intensity, it's not strenuous position, we can do long duration holds here. So you could basically lay here for 5 minutes and then swap sides. Now similar but standing is to use a high box or a table. Initially lock the knee backwards and focus on having an upright torso, and as you progress with it you can start to lean forwards, but really trying to focus on keeping a flatter low back, not round in that position. We want to always be thinking about reaching as far forward as we can, taking the head, the nose, the cap towards the toe, and even drawing the leg backwards as you get more progressed with this one. You can even keep going back there and wind it right up. If you're flexible enough, we can grab hold of the foot as well. Introduce the calf into it by bringing back towards dorsiflexion, so bringing the toe back towards you. So that is a cool one that it can be for beginner to advanced. Sticking with the single leg, I'm going to start in a lunge position now. Lock out the front knee, upright torso again. If that feels okay, I can start to lean forwards. First goal is just to place hands on the shins, on the knee. Once you have that, you can take fingertips to the floor. If that still feels okay, palms to the floor. Really focus on keeping that knee hyperextended and locked backwards. I can then walk the hands out to make that harder and harder. Again, I have the option to grab hold of the foot. This is a great one to combine if you're doing split training, because you can start to add in the hip flexor as well and go back towards your splits. And then we can start into the double leg variation. So now I'm going to take the hips backwards. I'm going to keep a flat back. I'm just going to come down to that waiter's bow position. So going forwards and backwards. So up and down, in and out of that position. So open and closing the hip. Really focusing on a flat low back and keeping the knees locked backwards. So the tighter you are, the less range you're going to have. Just come back up. And then every repetition, just trying to force it down just a little bit further. And you can keep pushing that one further and further until you can get below 90 degrees with that flat low back. And then that takes us nicely into a standard forward fold position. So with a forward fold, I prefer to have my knees hip width apart, lock the knees back first, drive the hip backwards, maintain the anterior tilt as much as you can, come forwards, try and lay the belly onto the thighs, chest towards the knees, and then cross the arms, now with the focus of drawing the elbows down towards the floor. Now notice I've just started doing a few little bounces. If you are very comfortable here, bouncing is cool, but be cautious. If you've got any back pain, any issues, any pathologies with your spine, probably stick with just the static holds. But the goal is trying to drive those elbows as close towards the toes as you can, so you're trying to lengthen the spine as well as lengthen the hamstrings, the calves, and that posterior chain. Similar to that is going into the downward facing dog that they use in yoga. And now I'm really focusing just on the calves and the hamstrings, so I'm going to lock the knees out. If I can't lock the knees out in this position, I'm going to bend one side, bend the other side, and alternate between the two. You could put little pauses in there, but remember the main goal is to try and get those knees locked backwards, and then you can play with the distance your feet are away from your hands. And then a favorite in the movement world is the Jefferson Curl. So the Jefferson Curl is really good because we can focus on the spine in terms of the mobility, that segmental movement. So I'm going to take the chin to chest first. I'm going to roll down through the upper back, through the mid back. Notice when I'm doing this as well, I've got knees soft, so I haven't locked the knees backwards. That allows me to focus first on the spine. So I'm trying to get as much rounding as I can. Now when I pass through the low back, I'm now going to lock the knees backwards, start to reach down as far as I can with the hands, trying to lengthen the spine and lengthen the calves, lengthen the hamstrings. Hold there for a few seconds, and then bend the knees and reverse that back out again. Now there's a few different variations we can do there. We can go down to the bottom position with straight legs. We can pull into a squat at the bottom, and then we can pull back out again. We can do the same thing and add load to it. The loaded version is commonly used in gymnastics. And obviously if you're more conditioned, you can go heavier. Even add the bouncers in at the bottom. Now for the more advanced, we can start to wind up the calves first before we add in the hamstring. So there's a couple of options here. I could do single leg, so I could put one foot onto here, I'm locking the knee backwards. Now try and do that same forward fold position. And then once I'm there, I'm trying to reach down with my head towards my toes. Now you could do bounces here, or you could just hang out in this position, but this is quite aggressive, a bit nervy, and really winds everything up. But it's probably one of the best ways of increasing this forward fold position that's gonna make things like, it's gonna make press handstand much easier. We can do the same with both feet at the same time. Lock those knees backwards, cross the arms, and then drive those elbows towards those toes. And again, notice I'm bouncing, or you could do long holds. Super spicy version is to use a barbell and do the same thing with the bouncers, with the toes elevated. And then one of my favorites, if you're flexible enough, is to use the wall to pin you into that forward fold position. So to get into it, we want to bend the knees. I'm going to pull in from the side, grab hold of my ankles, bring my head close to my toes, then straighten the legs. Make sure you can fully extend. You can pull yourself down and then elbows down towards the floor and hold there. Now if you do this one and your head is against the wall and not your back, you're probably not flexible enough to do this one yet, and I wouldn't recommend you do it because you might strain the neck. Now those are my favorites. They're the ones I mainly use with my clients depending on their flexibility and their goals. There's obviously lots of different variations that you can use. Now if you're interested in improving your straddle pancake, check out this video. Let me know how your flexibility is and what level you're at down in the comments, and I'll speak to you next time. Thanks guys.